Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We have a very exciting webinar today.
Good morning.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our third installment of the Verita Live for Parents. We're excited to have you. We're talking about a very important topic today, which is how do we learn? How do we actually help our kids, help our students to learn? If you saw in the webinar introduction to registration, we talked a bit about the importance of academic content, but how do we actually get students to tackle these content, tackle these skills and these understanding? And there are ways to do that. And today's webinar will be focused on this. So make sure you're using the Q&A function, make sure you're using the chat to send us messages, interact with us. But I wanted to take a moment to introduce our panelist for today, and that's Marco Fick. All right. Marco has a lot of experience with learning skills, which we'll use some more specific acronyms to help you understand what they are later on. So I'm going to pass it off to Marco to introduce himself. Thank you for joining, everyone. We look forward to interacting with you.
All right, thank you, Rico. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I hope you guys can hear me, see me. Everything's fine. Everything's good. All right. Okay, so firstly, welcome on this kind of early morning. So for introductions, I am, as Rico said, Marco Fick. I am a new teacher here at Verita, started in January. At my previous school, I was the ATL coordinator, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is the approaches to learning. So just, all right, I'm glad it's all good. Thank you. Okay, so just to quickly go through my background. So I have a degree in microbiology and chemistry. I also have my PGCE for teaching sciences and maths. As I stated, I was the ATL coordinator in previous school. For at Verita, I am the year 11 advisory teacher, and I'm also the year 11 and year 10 physics and chemistry teacher, and I am the year 7 mathematics teacher as well. So I'm very excited to be here at the school with you guys, and although I cannot see you right now, I know I will have a good time at the school with you guys. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a poll that I want you to please answer for me. This is just for me to get a rough idea of what knowledge do you have, what prior knowledge do you have about the ATL skills. The poll should have just popped up. So it's how much you know about the ATL skills. So we have a lot. I know what it stands for. I see there's just a small spelling error there. Sorry about that. So I know what it stands for. I have heard of it. What are ATL skills if you have no idea what it is about? Right. We'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. All right. Again, it's just to give me a general understanding of where the knowledge is on this. On your screen, it should be there if you can vote. All right. Okay, I'm looking for results. So yeah, then I think it's a good thing that we have this webinar now, because I see the majority is that what are ATL skills. So I'm glad we are having this. I have heard of it, it's also a good chunk, and I know what it stands for is also a good start. All right. Okay, looks good. All right, let's continue. Okay, so to get to the basics of it, what are ATL skills? Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in an international school, we love acronyms. All right, we have acronyms for everything. So this is another one thrown into the mix. So ATLs are something that I believe you would have at least heard of somewhat somewhere, especially with the reports that went out. You had a small section that said ATL skills and all that. So what it is, initially, what it stands for is approaches to learning, all right? So it's the skills that are based on how the student approaches the content that is given to him or her. So that is one of the big things. So if we look through these 3 points over here, so they are a set of valuable skills that will help students learn how to learn. These can also be seen as life skills that students will use outside of the classroom and after school. They are transdisciplinary skills that are developed in students through the entire school. So what that means is it's not bound to a specific subject. It's not bound to a specific year group. It's interdisciplinary. We use it through the entire school, whether it's in the primary, whether it's in the secondary school, it doesn't matter. We work through it. The only thing is we give them a bit more chance to do it on their own than us advising them the whole time. So, and then the last point here, they are intended to develop students as lifelong learners and reinforce that we are teachers of learners as well as teachers of subjects. So the thing is, the main goal for us with the ATL skills, if we think of what are ATL skills, is the main reason this happens is to create self-managed learners and putting control of their learning in their hands. That's the biggest thing. We want them to be able to control their own learning and be self-managed and be able to work on this on their own and be able to go into the world and be ready for it. So what are ATLs? That's what it comes down to initially. We can go to the next slide. All right, so this is more of a formal definition of ATL skills. So the ATLs are brought through to us from the IB. All right, so this is the definition I got from there. So through ATL in program, students develop skills that have relevance across the curriculum that help them learn how to learn. Now you'll see a lot of time they will reference to learn how to learn, which is a good aspect, but I've always seen ATL skills as a tool, a device to help children outside of the classroom and to help them after school. So when they have, when they get to college or university, it will help them there because it's necessary life skills to have. It will help them in their workplace. So it's more than just learning how to learn. It's also more of everything else. All right, and then if we look through the bullet points, ATL skills can be learned and taught, improved and practiced and developed incrementally. So it is a long process. It does take a long time. It's not only one and done, one lesson and there we go. It's a long, long process. It takes effort. We as teachers are also still developing it as we are all just lifelong learners. The second point, they provide a solid foundation for learning independently and with others. Independently is the biggest one for me there. It's very important to create independently functioning students so they can take control of their own learning in that aspect. Third point, ATLs help students prepare for and demonstrate learning through meaningful assessment. They provide a common language that students and teachers can use to reflect, articulate on, and the process of learning. All right, so that's just kind of the formal definition. All right, so I think we'll go to the next one. Okay, so why do we use ATL skills? So this is the big one. The reason why we are doing this. So through approaches to learning, students are provided with the tools to enable them to take responsibility for their own learning. I'm just going to read through the 3 points and then there's a few stuff I want to say. So central to this is learning how to learn and developing in individuals and an awareness of how they learn best, of thought processes and learning strategies. They are learning important life skills that will benefit them outside of the classroom and in life after school. So what I want to add onto this is that the ATLs are a set of skills that we will give students and provide students with the opportunity to become an expert of these skills that will help them in their real life. It is very, very important skills for outside of the classroom, after school, in university, in college, in the workplace. All of these skills that we will be looking at now in detail is very, very important for the forming of an entire person. It's a very, very important thing in the workplace, and a good work ethic will come from it. So the main thing of why we do this is to help students realize that they have control over their own success and their own learning. A lot of the time students feels like the control of education is in the hands of the school or of the teachers or something like that. The ATL skills will help us give the control of their own learning, so they can be in control of how they learn and how well they will do at the end of it, and take responsibility in that aspect as well. So the goal of this is to form independent learners. We want learners to be able to take the wheel and take responsibility and be independent from that. And we as teachers and parents should only be supervising and instructing and helping them along the way, not doing the driving for them, if I can use that analogy. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so that was the why of ATLs. Now, what do they consist of? Now, ATLs is a very, very broad group of terms. It's really, really big. So the 5 major ones we're looking at, you would also have seen this on report cards. There were 5 of them. Each were given a certain grade of developing, meeting, or exceeding expectations. So the 5 big groups of the ATLs are communication, social, self-management, research, and thinking. Then if we go to the next slide, we will see that those 5 groups can then be broken down into 10 more detailed clusters or subgroups, if you want to call it that. So it kind of spreads out. So we have the 5 main groups, and then we have those divide into 10 subgroups or clusters. And then if we go to the next slide, we can see they form into even more. Those 10 clusters then divide into something like 105 subclusters. So you can see in this, I just put this in to show you the intricacy of it. It's not a very basic surface thing. It's something we really have a lot of depth to, and a lot of things we can get that will help your children to learn and help them have the correct skills to become independent learners. So all of this makes up the ATL skills. All right. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're going to go through an overview of each ATL group, so the big 5, and also the smaller 10. All right, so we're going to go through each one. The first one, communication. So how can students communicate through interaction, and how can students demonstrate communication through language? Now, this can be assessed in a classroom in different ways. So later on, we'll see with ATL skills versus subject knowledge. The difference between those two is we have 2 types. We have one where we can separately assess them, and then also bring both of them together. Now, our main objective is, of course, to bring them together, but sometimes we have to develop one before we can bring the 2 together. So for communication, how this can be assessed, or how it will look like in a classroom, will be usually through presentation, speeches. In a formal assessment would be presentation and speeches, and then just normal interaction. If I ask a student, explain your answer, tell me why you got this conclusion, tell me what you think about this, all of that relates to communication. How effectively does a child communicate his thoughts and his workout process and all that? And then also the other part of it is through language, where you have communication through reading and writing. So that would be through essays or comprehensions or anything like that, where they have to bring forward their thoughts and their standpoint of it and how well they talk about their knowledge. Okay, next slide. All right, next one we're looking at is social skills. So one of the subgroups of social skills is collaboration. So how can students collaborate? Now, this is, of course, one that has been rather tricky to fully develop while being on online learning, as this one is mostly to do with group work, group projects. And of course, in online learning, we've done our best to try and do it where we made them go and have different group chats and stuff like that, and try to get that collaboration and social skills developing. But I think that is one thing that has a big detriment because of this pandemic. is the social skills of the students have declined somewhat, and that's why I feel that the online learning is very, very important, because they have that interaction with other people and other and their fellow students and so on. So for social skills, it would be usually assessed for group work. So usually group work will be used for this. And then also we look at the normal interaction between them and their classmates. How do they work with their classmates under normal circumstances? When they play outside, how do they interact with their classmates? How do they collaborate with them? How do those social skills build? So it's not only academically, but also their personal development that's going on here. So you'll see below it, there's just a few of the small clusters. The bullet points are just a few of the small clusters going through. So the big one there is working effectively with others and help others to succeed. As Verita, our core is the friendliness and helpfulness of the students. And I feel that help others to succeed with this specific one is very, very good, to be able to support them and show care for the other fellow students. All right, we can go to the next one. All right, self-management skills. Now, this is a very big one, especially now with online learning. It is very, very important, self-management skills. I think almost in all my reports, I stipulated self-management skills because this is a very, very important one. It's even one that we as teachers, and I think, and as parents also still struggle with, is self-management skills. So the big thing here is, so it's divided into 3 different parts. So you have effective, organization, and reflective ones. So if you look first at the organizational self-management skills, so how can students demonstrate these organizational skills? The first bullet point there, the first and second one is actually very important for me. Plan short and long-term assignments, meet deadlines, create plans to prepare for summative. Now, the big thing I would say here for self-management is, and this is also a very, very important one, in terms of developing an independent learner, is having them effectively manage their own time, having them create study plans, help them have a reference to work from, something that we will get later on how to incorporate this at home. But self-management for me is a very, very important one in terms of having them take their learning into their own hands, making sure they are equipped for what's coming and having to manage the workload, especially in an online setting where they're at home and it's a bit more relaxed in that sense. And it's easier to be lazy and all that type of stuff. So this is a very important skill that I feel will help them not only now for online, but when they're in school. It's a very, very valuable skill to have. So normally this will be assessed through something as simple as submitting homework on time, submitting your summative assessment on time, all of that stuff. And then also how well they are organized. All of that depends on the self-management. So if we go on to the next slide for the second cluster. Okay, the affective skills. So the organizational has more to do with the content we are working with. So how well do they organize their time and to deal with the content we are giving them? The affective skills are very important for them to develop as a person. So this has to do with their state of mind and their well-being as a person. So the affective skills, the cluster has a few subtopics or subclusters we can look at. And these are mindfulness, perseverance, emotional management, self-motivation, and resilience. Now, self-motivation, sorry, I just see a question coming through.
We'll answer it at the end.
All right, okay. Okay, we'll go through that. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so self-motivation is a very, very important one for me because it's an online setting where the students are at home. So they're laying in bed. Now they have to stand up and walk 2 feet to their desk to work. I mean, it's hard enough for us also to work online, being able to just stand up and go to work and all that. So I think motivation during this online time is very low for some of the students. And I think that's one we have to work on and we have to try and facilitate in, because if the motivation is not there, nothing else will follow. If the student isn't motivated or excited to say, all right, let's get up, let's go, let's start working, then nothing else will follow. So that's where it should start first, is the self motivation. So you'll see that it says practice analyzing and attributing causes for failure, managing self-talk and positive thinking. And then, so I think the main thing there is children can get very depressed very quickly when they don't achieve the type of marks or grade or progression they were hoping for. So there's something that I like to call failing well. It's where you fail, but you learn from it. All right, so everybody fails. You cannot succeed all the time, but you have to learn from your failures. That's how it doesn't matter how hard you fall down, it matters how you stand up. And that's the big thing with self-motivation that I think we should integrate into the students' learning. All right, then the rest of these, you can go through them as that, but the self-motivation and yeah, okay. So reflective skills. There's also a big one. We're always talking about feedback from teachers. Now, the feedback from teachers is very important for the reflective skills, because a student needs to know what he did wrong and where and how can he improve on it. That gets back to failing well. If feedback's given, the student should make sure he reads through the feedback to know what he can do next time to better himself. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, research skills. This one has two subclusters. So you have information literacy and media literacy. So this one is actually well, it's actually a bit more important now with them having access to the internet so easily. Being able to distinguish between good and bad sources, being able to know what is real news and what is fake news. So the information literacy skills of it is how can students demonstrate finding information literacy by finding, interpreting, judging, and creating information. So it's about going and doing research, collecting data, recording it, verifying it. That's the thing, because a lot of the times they just search something and they just read the first thing that pops up and they don't try and verify it. So that's one thing. Next slide. Okay, media literacy. So how can students demonstrate media literacy? By interacting with media to use and create ideas and information. Now, this one is doing very well in the sense that we are doing online teaching. So we're using different media platforms to help them convey information and help them analyze what information is correct and what can be used effectively, what is appropriate to use and all that. So that's also a big thing. So in other words, research skills will be assessed in school through research projects mostly, or by giving information and seeing how they interpret it and how they analyze it. That's also a big one. Okay, we can continue on. Okay, this is the last one of our 5 is thinking skills. Now this one sounds obvious, thinking, we all think all the time, but we have different pieces of it going through. So the thinking skills can be seen as there's 3 clusters of them. The first one we're looking at is critical thinking skills. So in other words, this is how they can think critically, analyzing and evaluating issues and ideas. For instance, in primary, critical thinking skills can be extremely effective when they are playing. And it sounds counterproductive, because if they're playing, how are they learning these skills? But this is exactly it. If they are playing if they're playing with puzzles, or they are doing brain teasers, or they're being given something to build out of blocks, that is critical thinking in action, because they're being given information and then they have to make a decision of how to go further with this. And that's a big thing about critical thinking. So it's being given information in an unfamiliar setting, and that's thinking in a whole. You're being given unfamiliar information and being in an unfamiliar setting, and now you have to use your prior knowledge and use your thinking skills to be able to create something from it. So for critical thinking, usually this is more tailored towards the math aspect of it, if you want to call it that, but it's more to do with coming up with a plan to combat a problem you have or to get a solution. All right, next slide. Okay, creative thinking skills. So this one also ties in with the critical thinking. The same again, if children in primary is being given blocks to play with, what will they do with it? Like, one kid will build a house, another kid will build a rocket. That's the creative coming from it. And the critical thinking with it is, how will I achieve my creative skill? So I have my idea, I have a creative idea in my head of what I want to do. And then the critical thinking comes in and helps me to say, how will I do this? So creative thinking is a way of getting children to think outside of the box and think and bring their own ideas forward in that sense. Next slide. Okay, the last one of the thinking skills is transfer skills. Now, this one is very important in the sense of, if we look at the first bullet point, how can students transfer skills and knowledge across disciplines and subject group using skills and knowledge in multiple contexts? So this one is important to realize, and this one also ties in with our global context and main ideas that we have throughout the school. And it states that what I learn in one subject isn't irrelevant in another subject. The transfer skills is being able to use what you learned in one subject and using it in another subject, or even in one unit and using it in another unit. It's being able to use your knowledge effectively in various situations, in various different contexts. All right, so it's not just I'm doing this and we're doing math and this is this, and then when we are done with math, I forget about everything and then I move on to the next thing. All right, everything translates with one another. Now, thinking can be assessed in the classroom in various ways. The best way is by putting them in unfamiliar situations, giving them something. I'll keep coming back to the children playing with the blocks in primary. So being given blocks and not being told anything else, just given blocks and leave them. Let them see what they can do. Let them think for themselves. Let them see what they can do with this, how they can do it, and all that. So the thinking is being assessed by having them bring their ideas into the classroom instead of being told what to do. All right, next slide. Okay, our goals. So from when a child enters the school until he exits, these are the 4 goals we are striving for. So when a student comes into the school, he is a novice with the ATL skills. In other words, beginning. So what that means is he's observing. He's watching everybody doing it. He's watching his teachers explain it. He is he's being told what is this. He is being shown. So it's a very leading role, and it comes strong from the teacher and you as a parent showing them what to do. And then as we progress, it goes to a learner, which is where they start copying someone do it. Then it goes to a practitioner where they can use the skill, so they can demonstrate it for other students. So this is where it's good to bring in all the students to the younger ones so they can see how other students use it. And then by the time they leave school, we want them to be experts, so self-regulating, so they can show others how to use the skill accurately and assess how effectively it is being used. So these are the goals we're looking at from when they come into the school until they leave. Okay, next slide. All right, ATL skills and subject knowledge. I talked about this a bit earlier, but I'm just going to quickly go through it. So the most effective way to develop approaches to learning is through ongoing process-focused disciplinary and interdisciplinary teaching and learning. So this is about, it's not a one and done deal. it's going to take years and years of recurring, going through it, making sure they know it, repeating it, recurring, and so on, and getting them through those goals I just showed, and also being able to use the skills everywhere. Because if this is repeated in each subject, they know what is important. And then using vocabulary, learning ATL skills described as, and then, yeah, so we have the cognitive, affective, and metacognitive. These are just different ways of incorporating it in. And then here on the side, so the dual focus, sorry, I was going to get this. Okay, so the dual focus promotes students' engagement, deep understanding, transfer of skills, and academic success. Over time, students should develop clear and sophisticated understandings of how they learn best and how they can evaluate the effectiveness of their learning. It's also important to understand that each student is individual in their own right, that no one student will learn the same way. And that is why we're trying to get them to be independent students so they can take control of their own learning. Okay, next slide. All right, so now how can you help develop these skills at home? So how can you as a parent help develop these skills at home? So we'll go through each one and just quickly go through them. So the first one, communication. So I think the most important thing here is to have them explain what they're doing, not just tell you what they're doing, but explain what they're doing. So for instance, in maths, they say, oh, we're doing adding and subtracting. It's like, okay, that's good, but tell me, how do you add and subtract? So that's a good way to get them to get their thoughts out, because they remember that a lot better when they are the one explaining how to do something. They remember that a lot better. Social skills. I think the easiest thing here is to have them help you with projects in the house. This will help them develop the collaborative skills and be able to work with others. So give them projects to do, give them something to do except just maybe sitting at the screen, or have them work, if they have siblings, have them work on something with their siblings, especially now in the online setting where they don't have a lot of face-to-face interaction with a lot of different people. It can be very good for them to have that interaction, to just sit and think about something together, talk about something together, work on this together, something like that, just to get them used to working with other people and going through it. Okay, next slide. All right, so self-management. This one, I think it's important to ask your child what work they have due and when. So ask them, when do they have due? What do you have due on that day, and so on, and have them write it on a calendar or in a journal, and emphasize the importance of creating a study schedule. I think that's a big thing. Have them write everything down. It ingrains it into their head. Then research. I think it's important if you sit through research with them, help them distinguish what is good and bad sources. When they are on news articles, help them know what's the right stuff and the wrong stuff, especially now in COVID, having good information and bad information. Sit through it with them and so on. Okay, next slide. Thinking, this one I think is to get them away from the screen. That's the best thing. Get them away from the screen. Give them puzzles to do. Let them help you baking. Let them measure the ingredients. Anything to get them away from the screen and help them critical thinking, creative thinking skills, and so on. All right, next slide. All right, so students should think about this one, distance learning. So we can see we have communication, we have all the clusters there. So this is just a few things that they can do to help them during distance learning. So yeah, I'm not going to go through each of one of them now. I will, if you want, I can share these with you and then we can look at them. Okay, next slide. Okay, second poll. So do you think you understand ATL skills better after this discussion? I hope this will be a yes. So it's a bit more clear of what we're trying to do in terms of the ATL skills, because it's not only about the content they learn, it's about how to use what they learn. All right, we're just waiting for results to come in. Okay, we're just waiting for the results of the poll. Yeah, while we wait for the responses, let me quickly go through the Q&A, or did we get the responses now? Yeah, we got it. Okay. All right, so I'm glad to see most said yes. Yes for this revision. All right, it looks good. I'm glad this was informative. All right, if we go to the next slide, then I'll get to the Q&A. All right, so this is what I want to finish off with. So remember that we as educators and parents strive to not only raise academically strong students, but to raise competent people that will contribute to their society and grow as an individual. Developing ATL skills will help with this process. So this is our end goal. We want to raise academically strong students, but it's more important to raise competent adults and being able to contribute to the world around them. All right, last slide. Okay, thank you for listening. I will do, here's my email address. I will quickly go through the questions you guys gave me. I'll quickly do the ones that's in the chat. So Diana, you asked if you were to choose a cluster for parents to focus at home with the kids to improve, what would that be? I would say at the moment, I think the biggest thing is self-management. I think self-management is one of the biggest things we need to work on at the moment is making sure the students know when to submit what and all of that. All right. So I think that that would be the one I would focus on the most. Rico, I see a lot of questions for us sharing the slides.
Yeah, well, we're gonna sort that out. Don't worry.
All right. Okay. So that will come out. All right. So if I look at the Q&A, so is there a correspondence between ATL social communication and self-management skills and the SEL curriculum that Verita used in the past? Is Verita still using the SEL curriculum? What approaches is the school using to help students achieve the ATL skills? For example, are the teachers trained on particular practices? What can we as parents do at home to help children also?
Yeah, so Marco, I think I can answer this one. Yeah, so
Okay.
absolutely. With the CEL curriculum, we're using successfully past failures with second step and C, which is a new one we're implementing. There's a lot of overlap, especially when Marco was talking about mindfulness, resilience. There's a lot of overlap with these skills. So what we're kind of looking at right now is blending the two and making conscious of these different skills and where they overlap so we can kind of vertically articulate. So we know that, oh, by the time students leave Key Stage 2, they should have this set of skill for approaches to learning and CEL. Then when they leave Key Stage 3, they should have this set of skill. So absolutely, it's something that overlaps and kind of feeds into each other, which is very helpful. So yeah.
All right. Okay, so another one on the Q&A. So I see possible to have the PowerPoint. We'll address that. Yes, I can. So on the slide, there is a few ideas, but I believe I have some resources that have more. So I will send that through to Rico so he can send it through to you. So I'll send more, so there's more activities and stuff that you can do at home. Thank you, Maria, for the question.
You can take one more question, Marco.
Okay, let me just go through and see. develop their self-management questions. Getting them beyond the comfort zone. That is a good one. So getting them beyond the comfort zone, especially in now where they have literally walked 2 feet from their bed and so on. So it is difficult. So I think to get them out of their comfort zone, I think the best thing would be maybe to give them a kind of short-term goal. Let them get a short-term goal to work with, because a long-term goal can always be, yeah, we'll talk about that later and all that. But so get them short-term goals, specific short-term goals, so they can directly reach for it and say, all right, I have to do this today, otherwise I won't reach my short-term goal, that type of thing. Get them motivated in that way. And especially if it can be something to do with what they really like to do and so on, I think that can be a good one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Marco, for that very informative ATL session. And judging by the polls, it seems that a lot of you have a much better understanding of the importance of approaches to learning and how that can actually benefit your child in the classroom, in and out of the classroom. So thank you very much, Marco. And as you said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to him to talk more about ATL skills. And it's great to see our community so passionate about this topic. So definitely something we probably need to do again to some extent, Marco, for the community. So thank you. I also wanted to remind you, our next webinar will be on Wednesday, April 7th. It's going to be on the teenage brain, highlighting what's going on in their brain, because it is a very difficult year group, an adolescent, but also very fun, very exciting. Okay, so it's going to be covering ages from 10 to 18. Lots of interesting things going to be happening there. T and I are going to be talking about this aspect. So we will send the information to you in the coming weeks for this webinar. And until then, stay safe. Thank you for joining, and thank you for all your support, and have a lovely day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye, everybody.